In this video, you'll learn how to add your Rive graphics to a Unity game using Noesis, a user interface middleware that supports most major game engines, including Unity and Unreal. Using Noesis and Rive, you can create amazing interfaces and UIs for your games. We'll cover everything you need to get started with Rive, Unity and Noesis in this video, with additional links in the description for more resources. We'll extend the Unity FPS demo and add animated HUD elements. The text notifications, border, health, and ammo UI are all Rive animations. If you're new to Rive, go check out the introductory video we made that demonstrates how to create the health bar. This video will focus on adding the health and border animations. You can check out the full example game on GitHub to see all the graphics working together. Okay, so let's start by implementing some animations in Unity using Noesis. If you are completely new to Rive, then I recommend you check out our video that we made showing you exactly how to create this health bar over here. And this is one of the animations that we'll be adding in this video. And to quickly demo this, just to showcase what we'll be doing, if you hop on over to the Animate tab, then you'll see that we have this list of animations. What we care about is the state machine, as this is what will be driving our animation. And as you can see, we have this input field over here. So if we play this animation, we can manipulate this value to control the animation that is displaying. And this is exactly what we will do in code. But if you want to learn how to create this animation yourself, then check out the dedicated video covering that. And the other animation that we'll be adding in this video is the game UI frame. And it's just this animation you can see over here that's constantly playing. So the first thing that we can do is actually just make sure that we have these files ready, and we'll just export them. As you can see with the game UI frame, we currently have the actual artboard has a color, and we don't want that because we want it to be transparent so that you can actually see the game content beneath it. And once we've done that, I'm just going to say download for runtime, and then you can save it. And same for the health, we'll need to download this as well. Now that we have our animations downloaded, we can head on over to Unity. And I've already created the starter project, but if you want to follow along, you can go to new project and you should see FPS microgame. And this is an example Unity project. And they have tutorials showing you exactly how you can modify this game. So if you are completely new to Unity, then this is a good jumping off point. You wouldn't need to know anything in particular about this game to follow along. We're just using it as an example. But I've already created the game, so let's just jump into that. Now that we have our game open, we can just quickly play it and see what is going on. So as you can see, we have some HUD elements, health and shooting statistic at the bottom right, so that's your ammo count. So those are the items that we'll be changing. In this video, we will just be changing the health. So let's actually get started and start implementing that. What we'll need to do first is actually add Noesis as a package, as we'll be needing that for all of the UI elements. So if you go to Window and you go to Package Manager, then you can import a package from disk. And what you'll need to do is actually first download the Noesis package from their website and then extract it, and then you can find the package.json and just open that. And if you are new to Noesis, you can just head on over to noesisengine.com and there you'll find download instructions. In this particular video, I'm using beta 7 of the Noesis GUI version 3.2. Please note, if you want to add Rive animations, you will need to use at least version 3.2, which should be released by the time you watch this video. After you've added the package, you should see this, a new input system, and yeah, just restart your editor and I'll get back to you when that's done. Okay, so now we've added the Noesis package. What we'll need to do now is assign a license key. So in our main assets folder, you should now see noesis.settings, and you can get a free license key if you meet the correct criteria. So if you go to licensing, you can see that if you earn less than 100k, you are considered indie and it's free. And you can also generate these trial keys, and that's what we'll be doing in this instance. So we'll just generate one for the name Gordon and add that information. Okay, and next we'll just organize our files by creating a new folder, call it Noesis GUI, and I'm just going to add the settings to that. And as a quick demo, you can actually already see that Rive is working, and we'll just add the files that we exported. So if we click the health one, you can see it's actually animating at the bottom right. So it's a nice little preview of the animation. The next step is for us to create a Blend project, as that is what Noesis uses to lay out its UI components. Blend is a Microsoft product and it comes with Visual Studio. And you can open that or create a new project in whatever way you like. But as we have the package installed in Unity, there's a nice shortcut. If you go to Assets, and then you can click Open Blend Project. And you can see that the project is open, and we have Assets and Blend. And the first thing that we like to do is make sure that we work in the correct folder. As you may recall, we just added the Noesis GUI folder, and you can see that it's saying hold on, and that's because like it's smart enough to know that you made a change to your Blend file, and Unity will automatically get the correct files it needs to actually render the Noesis GUI on screen. But before we get to the rendering part, let's actually work on structuring our project. As you can see, we have these two new files, the Rive Noesis tutorial mainview.xaml, and then the same one but .cs. If we wanted to move this to the Noesis GUI, I recommend doing that from Blend and not from Unity. And the reason for that is because you need to be sure that it's linking correctly within your Blend project. So at the top here, I'm just going to say show all files, and Noesis GUI will add this to this project, so include in project. And you can see that the folder is now colored. And then what we'll do is simply drag in that file into that folder and just say OK. And now we'll just save the file and go back into Unity. And it will take a bit, but we should see that these files move. So now in Noesis GUI, everything is organized as we would like it to be. Okay, so going back into Blend, we'll just select the main XAML file, double click that. And you can see that this is currently what we have in our design file. And this is what will render if we add this to Unity. And just to show that this is working, we'll jump back into Unity. And in order for you to show any Noesis UI, you'll need to add it to the main camera. And I recommend that you read the Noesis docs on the best practices for rendering and adding it to cameras. And this will depend on your project as well. And as you'll see, we'll actually need to modify it slightly for this particular project. But just to get started, let's add this file to our main camera. And if we click the main camera, you can see that we now have this component Noesis view. So let's see what this looks like in game. As you can see, it's rendering, but it may not be clear in the video. But if you go really fast, if you hover really fast, it has like a weird little effect that's not rendering cleanly. It makes it a little bit distorted. And the reason for that is because there is some post-processing effects being applied to the main camera. So one thing we can do, and this is maybe not needed for your project or for the game that you're working on, but if we go and disable post-processing, you'll see that the whole view has changed. So post-processing is no longer being applied to this camera, but that the Noesis view is being rendered cleanly. So it's no longer flickering. But that's not what we want to do, because we want post-processing in this game. So let's just stop this game. And what we'll do instead is select the main camera and go to the Noesis view. And for now, we will just remove this component. And instead, we're going to right-click the main camera. And in the prefab, we will open asset in context. And what we'll do is you can see that the main camera already has a secondary camera called weapon camera. and we'll add a third one. So we're going to go into this, or right click camera, and we'll call this UI camera. And then, very important, we'll set the render type to be overlay, and we'll set the culling mask to nothing, and we'll also disable rendering shadows, and the depth texture will turn to be off. As this camera doesn't need to do any particular rendering, all we want this to do is to render our Noesis UI. And then finally, if we go to the main camera, you can see that we have this stack of cameras, and we'll need to add this new camera, the UI camera, to that stack. The order that you have these cameras in are important, because you want to have the UI camera layer above the weapon camera, because our UI elements need to be above all of the other cameras in the game scene. However, this may be different for you. Maybe you want the weapon camera to actually render above the UI. But for this demo, we'll keep it as is. And now we'll just go back, and what we'll do instead of adding it to the main camera is we'll add our Noesis view to the UI camera. So I'm going to select that and just drag in our Rive Noesis. And finally, if we press play now, it should work. And perfect, and it's no longer flickering. Something else we can do as well is just set the rendering quality, or the tessellation pixel error to high quality. And again, if you need more information on this, please see the Noesis docs and guides for additional information. So now that most of the setup is out of the way, we can actually start with the fun side of this whole project and start designing our UI. So we're going to go back into Blend, and I'm going to delete these components, and delete the stack, and delete the border, and all we want is this user control. And we're going to set this to be a fixed size, 1920 by 1080, so standard HD, and I'm just going to zoom out a little, and next we will add a grid. So if you select this, right click on it, and then you can click grid, and you can just drag it in the scene. And a quick little hack is just to right click on the name over there and click layout, reset all, and this will fill up all the available space that is available within this user control. And this grid will allow us to just lay out our components in the way that we want it to. You can do pretty advanced things with Blend, and Noesis has a lot of tutorials that show you exactly how to do particular things, including data binding and constraints, and they have a lot of examples that you can look at. I do recommend taking a look at those if you are new to Blend. But for this particular video, it's luckily not important for us to know all of the details. It's quite easy to add a Rive animation. But what we'll need to do is actually add that Rive animation. And if we search for Rive in the components that we can add, you can see there is nothing of the sort. And the reason for that is because Blend doesn't know about Rive, but Noesis does. And luckily, the Noesis team has a package. So we'll go into Project, and we'll need to say Manage NuGet Packages. And I promise this is the last configuration. Go into Browse and search for Noesis. And you'll see Noesis GUI. Just install that. Once it is installed, you'll see it's installed both the GUI and the GUI extensions. And if we now go back to the list, you can see searching for Rive, we got Rive control. And I'm just going to drag that in. And for now, we'll just make it slightly bigger and censor it. And if we go at the bottom right here, while Rive control is selected, you can just open the miscellaneous, and you'll see we have this source variable or source input here. And for this, we'll say health.riv. So this will be the name of the Rive file that you want to include. So make sure you spell that correctly. And now if we save this and jump back into Unity and play, you can see that our health bar is actually showing in the middle of the screen. So we have a Rive animation, and it's showing something. So let's stop this animation. or stop this game, sorry, and jump back into Blend. Here you'll need to do a bit of experimentation. And you may be asking yourself, well, how can I more easily do the design and view a live preview? And you can do that by actually just not stopping the game. So if we go back in and just play this, you can see that nothing has been applied. But if we go back into Blend and I save it and go back into Unity, it immediately updates. However, it's not really showing it in the correct space. And the reason for that is because we have our view size to a different setting than what we have in our preview. So let's just go into game, and for demo purposes, we'll say full HD. You can learn more about Blend and using constraints. But for this tutorial, we'll just set it to full HD. And now if we play it, you can see it's rendering in the correct space at the bottom left. However, it's being blocked by the GUI that comes pre-installed with this whole project. So let's just disable this for now. We'll go into Game Manager, Game HUD, and bottom left corner. And we'll just disable this entirely and play one more time. And perfect, our animation is at the bottom left. However, it's a little bit small, so we'll just go back into Blend, and I'm just going to drag this out and just save it again. And that seems closer to what we want it to be. And for now, you'll see that it obviously does not animate yet, and that is where data binding comes in. So we'll need to find a way to tell Noesis that the value has changed. And in order to update the Rive state machine, we'll need to make use of a Rive control that is part of Noesis, and this will allow you to expose input values and bindings. So if you're familiar with Blend, you may already know that you can create bindings to data sources. And in this video, it's quite easy what we'll need to actually do. If you go back into Blend and we select our Rive control, you can see that we have this field called inputs. And if you select that, you can add a new input. And now we will just need to name the input correctly. And the name for this input you can find in your Rive file. So if we open Rive, you can see that here we have our inputs and it's health with a lowercase h. And it's important that you name this correctly. So we'll say lowercase h health. And then you can see it also has an input value. And this input value you'd need to data bind. And you can see that we have this Rive input name health. And if you wanted to, you can go into the inputs and you can actually data bind values here. But before you can do that, you'll need to create a data source. And in this particular version of Blend, the data tab is no longer available. You'll need to use version 2019. However, it is quite easy to just modify the code in this instance. And that's exactly what we'll do. And as you can see, we'll need to add this input value over here. So I'm just going to copy this example. And if we go back into Blend, you can see input name health and input value binding. And this time we'll make it capital HALTH, health. And perfect, that should work. And let's just save this. And you can see that if we select this Rive input, you actually get this in the inspector. And you can see that we have this binding that's over here. If you wanted to do this manually and set it up with like fake data context sources, you can do that in Blend as well. However, in Blend, you don't have the ability to preview your Rive animations. You'll need to actually run them in either the C++ project or in one of these game packages that have the Noesis package installed. So saving this and jumping back into Unity and just playing it, this should not actually have made any difference in the animation. However, now at least we are exposing the correct binding, and we'll need to tap into this binding called health and then updates it in the context of the game. So going back into Unity, we will now need to create a new script and add that to our camera. So we'll create a new script and we'll call this main HUD view model. And you can definitely take a look at the other samples that Noesis has made for a better clarification on their view model and how you can tap into the data binding of the XAML files. So let's open this file. And just to clarify, you can technically call this anything, but the convention is to call it view model at the end. And I'll just paste in the final code, and before I explain it, let's just see it running in action, and then you'll get a better idea of what's going on. Okay, and now if we play, it should be binding our animation with the health of the player. So let's see, and it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because I did not add the script to the camera. It didn't take me too long, luckily, so to figure that out. So going into player, main camera, main HUD view, we can not add it to the main camera. If you remember, we added it to the UI camera. And now if we go there, you should see the main HUD view model script. And let's play again. And let's see. And the animation is actually animating. So now you can see as we lose health, it is being tied to the animation. And finally, we will die. Okay, now that we have things working, let's actually explore what is happening in the code. By default, Unity extends the mono behavior. And what we are also extending is the iNotifyPropertyChanged interface. And this is what allows us to tap into the data binding. And the first thing that we'll need to do is in the start method, you'll need to find the Noesis view and then assign the data context to this, which means that the values that we expose here are the values that the data context will look for. And in particular, the value that we are exposing is this public float health. And note the capital H, and this is exactly the same as what we have in Blend. So if we open Blend, you can see we have a binding for health. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that you can actually see it. And sorry, I should have done that sooner. Here we have Rive inputs, input name health. Again, this is the name of the input as defined in our state machine. This can also be a capital H for health. And it doesn't need to be the same as this binding. And again, the binding is what we'll call in the Unity code. So jumping back to that, you can see that we have this public float and we expose the get for this, which is equal to this local private float health. And when we set the value, we first check to make sure that it's not equal. If it is, we return. Otherwise, we set the local health variable. And then once it's set, we call onPropertyChanged. And the onPropertyChanged method and the propertyChanged event handler over here, these you can just copy paste, as that is what you'll need to call to notify the state or the notify property changed that the binding value has changed. And then all you need to do is actually set the value and then the binding will update. And you can do that in whatever way makes sense for your particular game. For example, if we were to change this to 50 and save and jump back into our game, you can see it's now set to 50 and it will remain like that. But we obviously want it to be dynamic and we want it to change in accordance to the value of the actual health. So what we do in this particular game instance is we need to find the actors manager, as that has access to the player's health. So once we get the actors manager, then we can get the player health by calling the player get components health. And then finally, in each update method, we are setting the value of our binding. And as you can see, it's quite simple. The way that you drive the animation is all defined within the state machine, as we can see over here. And all you need to do as the programmer is set up the correct value for the particular state, and your designers can go crazy and, depending on the value, do whatever they want to do. What is really nice about this is if you have the same input values and the same naming convention for them, then you can swap these out with any file and it will still function exactly the same. As a last step, I said we'll also add this animation just to show you how easy it is to add multiple Rive files. So we'll go back into our Unity game and we'll play it for now and keep it running. Okay, it's working, and we'll go back into Blend. And we're going to search for Rive again and add Rive control. And for this particular one, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say layout, reset all. And we want this to be above or below the other Rive control. And then we just need to find the correct name. And I forgot the name, so let's jump into Unity. It's called game UI frame.riv. So back in Blend, we'll go to source and say game UI frame.riv. And now if we save this, we can just go back into Unity and you can see it automatically added our UI over there. Currently it is blocked by the UI that's in game. So if we go to Game Manager, Game HUD, I'm just going to disable this. And there you can see we have our animation working as we expect it to. However, the bottom left of the health bar is a little bit too close to the edge over there. So let's just go back into Blend and select this. And I'm just going to drag it out. Save it. Go back into Unity. That's too much. Last try. And perfect. That looks decently good. And I forgot to save the health file. So let's just go back into this, save, and go back into Unity. Perfect. And now if we get shot, okay, maybe not. Let's go to the other player. Let's go to the boss. And it appears we broke the actual game logic. I'm just going to restart. Okay, going back into Game HUD, going to disable. Oh, it may actually be because we're disabling the Game HUD. It may break some of the logic. Okay, for demo purposes, let's just keep some of the broken logic. And I'm just going to disable the compass. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. And cool, yeah, we're losing health. And that's it for this video. As you can see, it's quite easy to add your Rive animations. In the final project that you can see on screen that's demoing now, we'll add a few additional things. As you can see, we have a loading, or we have an indication of how much ammo you have, including the number of enemies that are left. So if you're interested in the final project, you can find that on GitHub, or if you just want to play this game and check out the UI yourself. As a last note, you may have noticed that in Blend, when we were searching for Rive, it had Rive control and Rive trigger action. And if you look at the documentation, you can see that Rive trigger action is an action that will fire a trigger in a Rive control. And this is a way for you to set up trigger events within Blend when certain buttons are pressed or maybe something happens. And a trigger is normally defined in Rive as a once-off event. So maybe it's when you press the fire button, then the gun fires or something like that. For more information on this, see our final example, or you can take a look at the example that Noesis made showing you how to create a more complex UI using Rive and Blend. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and again, if you haven't checked out the animation video that Robert made, if you're new to Rive, then go check that out, as that will teach you how to make the health bar animation. Thanks for watching, and let us know in the comments what you would like to see next.